7 years of loyalty wiped out in 48 hours. Revenge is a dish best served silent. Want to hear more jaw-dropping stories of betrayal and calculated comebacks? Subscribe to Red Flag Archive. Don't miss out on the next Red Flag Chronicle. Your daily dose of karma is right here.
After 7 years together and building a life I thought was rock solid, I discovered my perfect fiancé was living a total double life. Instead of screaming or begging for answers, I chose the path of silent revenge. While he was picking out wallpaper for our new house with another woman, I was meticulously planning my total disappearance. No notes, no phone calls, just an empty apartment and the complete erasure of my existence from his reality. Here's how I turned into a ghost and made sure his world crumbled the moment I vanished. My fiancé, 31, and I, 29, have been together for 7 years. We were the golden couple of our friend group. 7 years of birthdays, family funerals, career shifts, and saving up for a house that we were supposed to close on in 3 weeks. People always say, trust your gut, but they never tell you how it feels when your gut finally speaks up. It doesn't feel like a spark, it feels like a slow-moving poison. Everything was perfect on the surface. Mark was the guy who remembered my coffee order and still held the car door open. But about 6 months ago, the glitches started. Little things. A password change on the iPad for security. A sudden influx of late nights at the office for a project that didn't seem to have a name. It's funny how after 7 years, you know the exact rhythm of a person's breathing when they're lying. One Tuesday, Mark came home smelling like a specific expensive woodsy perfume, the kind I've never owned because it gives me migraines. When I asked him about it, he didn't even blink. He told me his coworker Sarah had broken a bottle in the office break room. He laughed it off, kissed my forehead, and complained about how the scent had ruined his favorite tie. I laughed with him, but inside, a cold stone settled in my stomach. Mark doesn't even use the break room. He eats at his desk to stay focused. I started watching him, not in a checking his phone kind of way, not yet, but in a way where I noticed the gaps. Our 7th anniversary came and went. He bought me a stunning diamond necklace, but he looked at the wall behind me when he told me he loved me. We sat in our favorite Italian restaurant, the one where we'd celebrated every milestone, and for the first time in nearly a decade, we had nothing to talk about. The silence wasn't comfortable anymore, it was heavy, like the air before a massive thunderstorm. I looked at him across the candlelight, the man I'd built my entire adult life around, and realized I was looking at a stranger wearing my boyfriend's face. He was smiling, talking about the mortgage rates and the color we should paint the nursery in the new house, but his eyes were constantly darting to his phone, which was face down on the tablecloth. Every time it buzzed, his hand would twitch. He was there, but he was already gone. I didn't realize then that the house we were buying wasn't meant for us. It was meant for him, and someone else was already picking out the curtains. I was just the bank account and the placeholder. The transition from trusting partner to private investigator is a dark one. You start seeing the world in patterns of behavior and timestamps. Once the seed of doubt was planted by that woodsy perfume, I couldn't unsee the cracks. Mark was a creature of habit, and his habits were changing in ways that didn't align with a man planning a wedding. The digital paper trail started with the iPad. He thought he was being clever by changing his phone passcode, but he forgot about the cloud synchronization on our shared home tablet. One night, while he was working late again, I sat on our sofa with a glass of wine I couldn't even taste. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard it felt like it would bruise. I opened the synced messages. At first, it was just junk, notifications from Uber Eats for meals he'd never mentioned eating, and receipts for jewelry I'd never seen. Then I found the archive folder. There she was, Chloe. The messages went back 18 months. 18 months of "I miss you. I can't wait until the house is settled so we can finally be together." And this was the part that made me physically sick. Photos of them in our favorite vacation spots. He'd taken business trips to the coast that were actually romantic getaways. He had a whole separate Instagram account blocked from my view where they looked like the happy couple everyone thought we were. He was using our joint savings house fund to pay for her apartment security deposit. He wasn't just cheating, he was embezzling our future to build hers. I spent the next 4 hours scrolling through a year and a half of betrayal. I saw him mocking my boring hobbies to her. I saw them laughing about how clueless I was. I felt like a ghost in my own home, watching a movie of my life where I was the only person who didn't know I was being written out of the script. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped the tablet, but I forced myself to stop. I didn't cry. Something inside me just snapped. The person who would have cried for Mark died that night on the sofa. I didn't confront him when he walked through the door at 11:30 p.m., smelling like rain and lies. I just tucked the iPad back into its charging dock and went to bed. When he climbed in beside me and reached out to touch my shoulder, I didn't flinch. I just stared into the darkness, realizing that the next 3 weeks, I would have to be the best actress in the world. I wasn't just his girlfriend anymore. I was his landlord, his accountant, and his impending nightmare. Every message, every receipt, every photo. I spent that night BCCing them to a secret email address I'd created. I had the receipts. Now I needed the plan.
The next 3 days were a masterclass in psychological warfare, mostly against myself. Living with a traitor is like sharing a bed with a corpse. You can smell the rot, but you have to pretend you're just smelling the roses. Mark was in high spirits, probably because his transition plan was going so smoothly. He'd talk about the new house, asking me if we should go with the slate gray or midnight blue for the master bedroom. I'd look him straight in the eyes, smile, and say, "Midnight blue sounds perfect, honey." Inside, I was screaming. I was looking at the man I'd shared 2,555 days with, and I realized I didn't know him at all. The urge to throw the iPad at his head, to scream until my lungs gave out, to call his mother and tell her what a monster she'd raised, it was a physical ache in my chest. But I knew that if I broke now, he'd have time to move the money, he'd have time to spin the narrative, he'd make me out to be the crazy, jealous ex to our mutual friends before I could even pack a bag. The hardest part was the big reveal that never happened. On Friday, he took me out to dinner to celebrate the mortgage approval. He toasted to the rest of our lives. I sat there, sipping my water, watching his mouth move, and thinking about the screenshot I'd taken that morning, a message to Chloe saying he couldn't wait to be done with the dead weight so they could move into the new place. I was the dead weight. The woman who worked 2 jobs to put him through his MBA, the woman who took care of his dad when he had a stroke. I realized then that a confrontation would give him something he didn't deserve: closure. He wanted a dramatic breakup. He wanted me to cry and beg so he could feel guilty for a week and then move on, justified by my hysteria. If I gave him an argument, I was giving him a seat at the table. But I didn't want a seat anymore. I wanted to flip the table over and walk out of the room while he was still figuring out why the lights went out. I watched him pay the bill with our joint credit card, a card I would be canceling the second my plan was in motion, and felt a cold, crystalline clarity. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of a fight. I was going to give him the horror of a void. He was going to come home to a life that simply didn't exist anymore. No explanation, no "we need to talk," just the sound of his own heart beating in a house that was suddenly terrifyingly empty. I reached across the table,
touched his hand, and felt absolutely nothing.
The next 10 days were the longest of my life. I called it the ghost protocol. To Mark, I was the same doting fiancé, but behind the scenes, I was a ghost in training. I moved with a surgical precision I didn't know I possessed. While he was at his late-night meetings, I wasn't sitting at home crying over our photo albums. I was at the bank. Since I was the primary breadwinner during his MBA years, most of our joint assets were actually built on my salary. I met with a lawyer under the guise of estate planning. I found out that since the house hadn't closed yet, I could pull my half of the deposit without his signature if I acted fast. I did. I moved my savings to a private account he didn't even know existed. I rented a small, furnished apartment 2 towns over, paying in cash for the first 3 months to keep it off any shared statements. The logistics were the hardest part. How do you pack up 7 years of life without leaving a trace? I started decluttering. I told him I was donating old clothes to make room for the move to the new house. Every day, I'd take 2 large suitcases to my car. He thought they were going to Goodwill. They were actually going to a storage unit. I took the small things first: my jewelry, my birth certificate, the heirloom quilt my grandmother made. I even took the high-end espresso machine I had paid for, replacing it with a cheap, identical-looking model I found at a thrift store. He didn't even notice. He was too busy texting Chloe under the table. The psychological toll was brutal. One night, he tried to initiate intimacy. I had to fake a migraine, my skin crawling at the thought of his hands on me, hands that had been on her just hours prior. I lay in bed beside him, listening to his rhythmic breathing, and realized I was essentially living in a crime scene. He was the perpetrator, and I was the lead investigator, cleaning up the evidence before the fire started. By the final 48 hours, I was barely eating. My ghost protocol was almost complete. I had redirected my mail to a P.O. box. I had unlinked my Apple ID from every shared device. I even contacted the utility companies for the new house, the ones I had set up in my name, and scheduled them to be canceled effective the day of the closing. Mark was planning to move into a dream home that would have no electricity, no water, and no deposit. I looked at our calendar on the fridge. Saturday was the day. He was heading out for a bachelor weekend for a friend I knew didn't exist. It was his final getaway with Clubby before the big move. He kissed me goodbye at the door, promising to bring me back something special. "I love you, babe," he said, adjusting his sunglasses. I looked at him, really looked at him, and said, "You have no idea what's coming, Mark." He just laughed, thinking it was a joke about the stress of the move. He walked to his car, and I watched him pull out of the driveway for the last time. The second his taillights disappeared, I grabbed my keys. The clock was ticking. The moment Mark's car turned the corner, the ghost protocol shifted into high gear. I had exactly 48 hours before he would return to a reality he didn't recognize. I didn't have time to be sentimental. I hired a professional flash move team, movers who specialize in short-notice, high-speed jobs. I told them my ex was unstable, and I needed everything that belonged to me gone in 4 hours. They were machines. They stripped the apartment of every stick of furniture I'd paid for, every rug, every lamp, and every kitchen appliance. As the rooms emptied, the echoes started to return to the walls. It was eerie how quickly 7 years of memories could be reduced to cardboard boxes and industrial tape. By 4 p.m., the place looked like a skeleton. I sat on the floor of what used to be our bedroom, clutching my phone. This was the most crucial part. I logged into our shared laptop one last time. I didn't just delete my browsing history. I factory reset the entire device. I did the same to the smart home system, the Nest thermostat, and the security cameras. I revoked his access to the shared cloud storage where all our photos were kept. 7 years of digital memories, deleted. Then came the financial strike.
I called the bank and reported my credit cards as lost, effectively freezing the accounts he'd been using to fund his weekend with Chloe. I canceled the movers for the new house closing and withdrew the remainder of my portion of the escrow. By the time I was done, Mark's new life had a net worth of 0 and a pending lawsuit for a breached real estate contract. The final touch was the phone. I didn't block him, not yet. I wanted him to feel the silence first. I went to the carrier store, ported my number to a new provider, and got a brand new handset. I left my old phone sitting right in the middle of the kitchen counter, plugged into the charger, completely wiped. Beside it, I didn't leave a long, tear-stained letter. I didn't leave a list of his sins. I left a single laminated printed screenshot. It was the message he'd sent Chloe about me being dead weight. Underneath it, I wrote 3 words in black permanent marker. Weight shed. Goodbye. I walked out the door, locked it, and dropped the key down the sewer grate at the end of the street. As I drove toward my new life, I felt a strange, weightless sensation. I wasn't the scorned woman. I wasn't the victim. I was a ghost, and ghosts don't carry baggage. When Mark stepped through that door on Sunday night, expecting a warm meal and a clueless fiancé, he was going to walk into a tomb. I spent Sunday night in my new, tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. I had turned off all notifications, but curiosity is a persistent itch. At 8 p.m., the exact time Mark usually walked through the door, I felt a cold shiver. I imagined the sound of his key turning in the lock, the heavy thud of his suitcase, and then the silence. I didn't have to imagine for long. I had one window left open, our shared home security app, which I hadn't deactivated yet, just so I could watch the fallout. The first notification popped up at 8:12 p.m. Motion detected in living room. Then, motion detected in kitchen. I opened the feed. The quality was grainy, but the panic was crystal clear. Mark was pacing through the empty apartment, his silhouette jerky and frantic in the dark. He was holding his phone to his ear, calling me, no doubt, but my old phone was sitting on that kitchen counter, vibrating silently next to the dead weight note. I watched him find it. I watched him pick up the laminated screenshot. Even through the low-res camera, I saw his shoulders slump. He sat down on the floor, the only place left to sit, and buried his face in his hands. Then the spiraling began. My new phone, which I finally turned on, started smoking with notifications from mutual friends. Hey, Mark says he can't find you? Is everything okay? Did you guys get robbed? Mark sounds like he's having a stroke. Why is your Instagram gone? Finally, Mark realized the financial hit when he tried to order a pizza, his only option in a house with no groceries and no stove. I got an alert from our joint bank app. Transaction declined. Then another. Transaction declined. He was stranded in a hollowed-out life with no furniture, no money, and no fiancé. The best part? Mark's sister called me, sounding frantic. I answered, my voice calm and pleasant. Oh, hey, Jen. Is something wrong? Is something wrong? Mark says you moved out and took everything. He says the house closing fell through because the deposit is gone. Where are you? I'm at home, Jen, I said smoothly. But I think Mark is confused. I don't have a fiancé anymore. I found out he was moving Chloe into our new house, so I just simplified things for him. Tell him I hope the dead weight didn't hit him too hard on the way out. I hung up before she could respond. The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. Mark wasn't just losing a girlfriend. He was losing his reputation, his credit score, and his stability. He'd spent 18 months building a fantasy with Chloe, but he'd forgotten that I was the one who provided the reality. Without me, his perfect life was just a collection of unpaid bills and empty rooms. I didn't stop at just emptying the apartment. That would have been a breakup. I wanted a reckoning.
Mark's entire cool guy persona was built on his corporate reputation. He was the family man rising star at a boutique investment firm. What his bosses didn't know was that Mark had been using the company's client entertainment budget to fund his weekend trysts with Chloe, masking them as networking dinners. I knew this because for 2 years, I was the one who helped him organize his spreadsheets. On Monday morning, while Mark was likely waking up on a cold floor with a dead phone, I sent an anonymous, encrypted email to his firm's HR and compliance department. It wasn't a scorned lover rant. It was a professional, detached PDF containing the digital receipts I'd harvested from the iPad. Uber rides to Chloe's apartment tagged as Client X, hotel bookings on work days, and those business trips that perfectly overlapped his Instagram photos with her. By noon, I heard through the grapevine that Mark had been asked to leave pending an internal audit. In the world of high finance, expense fraud is a death sentence. He didn't just lose his girlfriend and his home, he lost his 6-figure career. The aftermath, 1 year later. TLDR, he traded a diamond for a pebble, and now he's throwing stones in a glass house. It's been 12 months since I dropped that key down the sewer. I'm currently sitting on the balcony of my own condo, one I bought with my own credit, decorated with my own taste, and filled with a peace I didn't know existed. Mark? Last I heard, Chloe left him about 2 months after the vanishing. Turns out, Mark isn't nearly as attractive when he's unemployed, living in his sister's basement, and facing a massive lawsuit from the housing developers for the breached contract. She wasn't in love with Mark. She was in love with the lifestyle my salary provided for him. Once the dead weight, me, was gone, the whole ship sank. Every now and then, I get a no-caller ID ping late on a Friday night. I never answer. I don't need to hear his apologies, his excuses, or his begging. The silence I left him with is the only language he deserves to hear from me for the rest of his life. People ask me if I regret not having a final talk. I just tell them, why would I waste my breath on someone who spent 7 years wasting my time? Living well isn't just the best revenge, it's the loudest way to tell a traitor they never mattered at all. Want to know how other stories of betrayal, calculated revenge, and the red flags we often ignore end? Subscribe to Red Flag Archive. Here, we uncover the truths that are usually kept hidden. Don't miss the next episode. A new story is already in the works.